Hello, my name is Caleb Bilta. Today I'm going to be defining and talking about a couple of different biomechanical terms. So the first term is compression, and basically compression means a squeezing mechanical loading created by forces in opposite directions acting along a longitudinal axis. And I'll be going a little bit more in depth on that in a second. The next term is load, a force or moment applied to a material. Next is strain, which would be the amount of deformation of a material caused by an applied force, usually expressed as a percentage change in dimensions. Next term would be Wolff's Law. That basically states that bones remodel according to the stress in the tissue. And then lastly, this term strength, in terms of mechanical strength, is the toughness of a material to resist loading, which is usually measured as the total work or peak force required to permanently deform, if we're talking about yield strength, or break a material, if we're talking about ultimate strength. So that last term there, mechanical strength, I included in there because I think it's important to be able to differentiate between mechanical strength and muscular strength. So basically, if you're in a gym and you're talking to people about strength, more than likely they're going to be talking about how much you can bench, that muscular strength. But the mechanical strength is talking about how much loading that a material can resist before it deforms permanently. And I think it's really important to understand the difference between those two types of force in case you're talking with somebody else who is in the exercise science field. Just because even though you may not be talking that often about mechanical strength when you're in a gym, talking about how much can you bench, how much can you curl, whatever that may be, but understanding the difference between muscular and mechanical strength I think is very important, so you don't look foolish if you're trying to differentiate between the two. So going back to some of those other four terms we were just talking about, I think that understanding them, not just being able to define them, is very, very important. They're important for me, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the first way I think they're really relevant in understanding how our body works essentially is really how load, strain, compression, how that all ties into Wolff's Law. And then the biggest way is osteoporosis, so preventing bone disease essentially. So by understanding that when we have a load that deforms a material, right? So that's that force that's being applied and strains that deformation that's occurring. So let's say I have a barbell and I'm loading that on my back, then according to Wolff's Law, my bone tissue is actually going to be remodeled in accordance to the stress that's occurring at that moment. So basically that I can make my bones denser through resistance training, through loading up on a barbell. And I think that's extremely important for not just older people, but really for anybody. So if I want to have healthy bones, if I understand what this terminology means, then I can understand that, okay, I should probably be doing some form of resistance training so that I can kind of build up my bone density, because according to Wolff's Law, my bones are going to remodel when I stress them in that way. So to me, like I said, that's not just important to older people, I think it's important and relevant to anybody. It's a big reason why I lift. I'm in here at the gym right now, getting a workout in, kind of talking about this at the moment, but I'm doing it because I want to be healthy, especially as I get older. I want to continue to be mobile. And I think another part of that, let's say you fall over. If you fall over, for me, it's not that big a deal. People laugh at me, whatever. But if I was an old man and I'm falling over, maybe I'd break a leg or something. But if that bone tissue is denser, then I'm less likely to have a very serious injury in that situation. And so this is the sort of thing I'm hoping to start talking with my parents about as they're getting older. I know they don't lift right now. They don't really have the time to, but I would love to see them in the gym. And understanding this stuff, understanding that this is how those forces can interact in order to strengthen yourself, I think is extremely, extremely relevant. These terms are significant to me in my career. So I want to be a basketball coach. I want to coach at the college level. And a big part of coaching at really almost any sport is weight training. So weight training to become more athletic. So I need to be able to understand what compression is, what load is, what strain is, and how Wolff's Law works in order to be an effective trainer from that side of things. Great example of this, and I can kind of tie this into my own career right now. As I'm coaching right now, I'm an assistant basketball coach. I have a girl who has scoliosis. but I have her in the gym and she does some lifting with me, but I have to be really careful. So when she first told me she had scoliosis, I said, all right, you need to talk to a doctor because I don't want to be liable for anything going wrong. I would feel horrible if something bad happened to you. So she went, talked to her doctor, and her doctor comes back and lets me know basically that they don't want to have any sort of loading that would cause compression of the spine. And you can see right off the bat there that those are two terms that I actually just defined. So if she had come and told me that, I have no idea what compression is, no idea what load is, then odds are I'm not going to be able to effectively work with her and I might get her hurt. But now I understand it, so basically I can understand, okay, no loading, so I shouldn't be putting a barbell on her back, right? Because that would cause that spinal compression, and a less, I guess, technical jargon term of compression basically is crushing of something. So when you have two forces pushing down on something like that, that's when you have compression. And so when I have a barbell on my back, spinal compression is occurring. So what can I do to fix that? That's sort of the next step, is understanding how can we adapt things. So a great example of this, I went online, and actually this is something we're going to start with her hopefully in the spring, is we're going to be doing split squats instead of a regular barbell back squat. And so basically what a split squat is, you hold dumbbells, and I have a bench right here. Basically I would put my back leg on this bench and I would do squats on my forward leg instead of having a barbell on my back. And that sounds probably not too difficult at first. If it doesn't sound very difficult, I highly recommend that you try it, because I've done split squats myself and they're not fun. They are really difficult to do, but the cool thing is it avoids that spinal compression if it's something that you don't want to have, for example, for scoliosis. So we can make sure that she doesn't hurt her back, but we can still get a workout in, so we can sort of make that adaptation to it. But again, if I didn't understand how loading works, how compression works, and how sort of that strain that's occurring, if I didn't get any of that, then when she told me that she can't have that loading, I would be kind of like, I don't know what to do with that information. So I need to have some sort of understanding of how that works in order to effectively work with her. I'm going to give you another example here. I'm talking about compression. So bench press, one of the really common things that happens when you bench, if you're new to lifting weights, is you hurt your wrists. So when I was new to benching, I didn't really know how to bench very well, and I always ended up with hurt wrists. And my thought process, well, I'm weak, I'm new to this, that's probably why they hurt. And then I did a little bit more research and found, no, there's actually a way you're supposed to be gripping the bar to ensure that you don't have improper compression of your wrists, that your wrists aren't really in a susceptible to injury position, if that makes sense. So I'll kind of demonstrate this here. So if I come to bench and I'm pushing up here, if I hold the bar this way right here, as you can kind of see in the video, I'm going to turn, the weight is really far back on my wrists there. And so even without doing the work, I can feel a lot of tension right here, a lot of that compression that's occurring, and it feels painful. So if I come in here, and now instead of having my wrists back like this, I rotate them forward, now my wrists are in a much more stable position in order to handle that load. So it's not that compression isn't occurring anymore, it's that the joint is actually positioned in a better way to handle that loading. And again, like I said, I didn't really understand that when I started lifting, but as I did research, just not even necessarily through classes, but just wanting to understand it better, I realized that, oh, I'm putting a lot of load here, there's a lot of compression occurring, and it's not in a very effective position. So just by rotating your wrist from here to here, it's a small difference. It looks small, but it makes a huge difference in the way your wrists feel. And I'm benching way heavier than I was earlier, not bragging, it's not a lot of weight yet, unfortunately. But I'm lifting more than I was and my wrists feel a lot better. And so this is relevant to me as a weightlifting instructor. When I have kids in here while they bench, pretty much the first time when they ever put their wrists on the bar, I always rotate their wrists for them forward and say, no, this is how you're supposed to be holding it. Or if I get somebody coming to me saying, hey, my wrists hurt, say it's because you're having your wrists compressed in a way that's not very effective for you. If you just rotate a little bit, your body's going to handle that compression a lot better. So understanding these things, I think, is extremely relevant to me as a strength trainer in terms of how that relates to basketball training. Because you got to be lifting weights if you want to be a great basketball trainer. And then kind of my last point here I don't think that this is just relevant to me. I don't think that this is just relevant to people even who are in exercise science. I think this is relevant to really everybody, because in my opinion, if you're safe to lift weights, because of what Wolff's Law tells us about bones, I think pretty much everybody who can safely lift should be lifting, because our bones adapt to weightlifting. We become stronger because of the stress that's occurring. So really, if you can lift and you want to be healthy, you should be lifting. Now, I don't know that it's enough to understand that lifting is good for you, okay, so I should lift. We want to understand these terms that I just defined here and how they interact with your body. So I want to know what compression means. I want to know what external loading is and whether or not I can do those things. So I think for even regular people, regardless of what your academic study is, I think that understanding some of these terms and understanding how they apply to strength training especially, I think is very, very important. So I hope if you're watching this video and you haven't really gotten into strength training before, that you consider it and that you do a little bit of research of your own.